Hello, I'm Kenny Yates and this is Too Deep. Welcome to part 4 of the creation story. And in this video, I will address the right out lie that we humans evolved from some ape-like missing link. With that said, let us turn our attention to the first chapter of Genesis. Genesis chapter 1, verse 26 through 28. And it says, "Then God said, Let us make man in our image, after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the heavens, and over the livestock, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps on the earth." So God created man in his own image. In the image of God he created him. Male and female he created them. And God blessed them and said to them, "Be fruitful and multiply, and fill the earth and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea, over the birds of the heavens, and over every living thing that moves on the earth." The creation of heaven and the 6 days of creation and the 7th day of rest were all covered in part 1 through 3 of this series. So this part 4, we will focus primarily on evolution. In our school system, backed by secular scientists, would love for us to believe that we are all evolved from primates, yet not one missing link has ever been found to date, nor has one single shred of evidence have been uncovered to successfully prove that humans have evolved from apes. But yet it is taught as fact. It all began very innocently, like the proverbial frog in the kettle story. You know the one I'm talking about. You put a frog in room temperature water on the stove and turn on the heat. The water gradually gets hotter and hotter, but the frog doesn't realize it. Why? Because it's cold-blooded and its body temperature gradually changes with the level of heat in the pot, and so it never jumps out. Eventually, the frog is boiled alive because it doesn't feel the gradual increase in the temperature change. And so, it is with us today. Things are changing very slowly, bit by bit, and we just go on with the flow. But in this day and age, things are changing very rapidly. The heat's turned all the way up. But how it all began was science began to teach that there are only 2 kingdoms, the animal kingdom and the plant kingdom, which psychologically cemented the belief that we didn't even realize that we are all animals. And if we are all animals, then we must have evolved. So if we are all animals, then why does a single unidentified DNA molecule found at a crime scene identify whether it is a plant, an animal, or a human being? And not only that, but every DNA molecule is unique to each individual. Today, we are taught that there are 6 kingdoms. Looks like we've evolved in that as well. But they still don't include a human kingdom. Why? Because that would suggest that we are separate from animals and might even lead to the suggestion of intelligent design. God forbid. They would have us believe or think that we are insignificant. But we are not insignificant. Humans have DNA that labels us human, and each one of us has our own special and unique DNA with our own special and unique fingerprints, even eye prints and voice patterns. Now, does that sound insignificant to you? Well, it doesn't to me. We are very significant. They've gone to great lengths to indoctrinate us with the belief, even to inventing Lucy, the missing link. But she has been debunked by real science and labeled a fraud. Yet, they still have her in science textbooks. So let us talk a little bit about Lucy. Lucy was supposed to be the missing link of the gradual transformation of ape to man that scientists have been looking for decades and was not able to find. It was never found because it never existed. We were created in the image of God. But Lucy is a Australopithecus afarensis. Really huge word. Lucy is the common name of AL 288-1. Several hundred pieces of bone fossils represented 40% of the skeleton of a female of the hominin species Australopithecus afarensis. In Ethiopia, the assembly is also known as Dinkinish, which means you are marvelous in the Amharic. Apparently, Lucy's bones are basically only broken pieces with many key features missing. When I say key features, I mean the skull, for instance, which is so shattered that the whole upper face is missing, rendering it too little to go on to properly, never mind accurately, reconstruct for a positive identification or classification. The hole in the base of the skull through which the spinal cord passes, called the foramen magnum, is completely missing. It is so badly damaged that evolutionists themselves can't even agree on the size of her brain case, even though the fragments that are pieced together can be placed at a point on the spine that will depict a more ape-like skull. They chose to mount it in such a way that gives her a more human look, which then in turn gives the illusion that she walked upright like a human. Evolutionists, by and large, made an executive decision to have Lucy walk upright, based mostly on a set of fossilized footprints from 932 miles away. Can you even imagine? These prints were dated by their dating system to be around the same time that Lucy lived. Therefore, by George, it had to be one of her kind that made it. Therefore, that proves she walked upright. Okay, then. To solidify their point, the scientists filled in the gaps of the shattered bones as much as half a foot in some places, giving Lucy a 3-foot frame, ensuring her height met the requirements to make the stride of the prints found. Please keep in mind that the broken leg bones would fit just as easily in a more ape-like proportions. Yet they choose to add the 3-foot frame. Now enter the artist, who depicts his or her interpretation of how Lucy looked, such as giving her white eyeballs and a human-like features with human-like hair, which I want you to understand, none of these things were ever discovered, much less gives her human features, or nonetheless gives her human features. Apparently, they also used a buzzsaw to cut and shape the bones so that they would fit nicely together. And we won't even mention that. No, I think we will mention it. Reportedly, the knee bone used for Lucy was found a year earlier and over 8,000 feet away and 200 feet deeper from where Lucy was found. Imagine that. So why this farce? Why the deceit, the deception? Could it be to prove the non-existence of something or someone? Maybe like a creator? Donald Johansen is Lucy's discoverer. Let us see what his thoughts are on Creator God at his speech when he received the Naked Emperor Award from the Freedom from Religion Foundation, which is an atheist group. And I'm just going to quote just one or two things that he actually said. He said, and I quote, "Get God's name off the money that we all worship and get in science we trust." I don't think we'll do that, but we do need to get that name off of our money. There's no question. End of quote. Johansen grew up in an atheist household. The story he tells about the one time he went to church with some friends at the age of 11, his mother asked him where he was going that Sunday morning when he was getting ready for church. When he told her he was going to church with some friends, she asked him, "What are you doing that for?" When he came home, the first thing she asked him was, "Did they ask you for money?" Donald Johansen admits he grew up an atheist, was always an atheist, and did not need to be converted to atheists or atheism. He grew up not knowing God, and it turned to hating God, obviously. I believe that is his primary reason, though he would disagree with that, but I believe that's his primary reason for inventing such a farce as Lucy, is to prove his religion, which is evolution, correct, and Christianity and God false. I think that was his primary reason, his primary goal was to prove God and Christianity a lie and prove evolution true. Now, some skeptics will ask, if we all came from one man and one woman, why are there so many different people? Different looks, different speech, even different languages and different colors? For that answer, we will look to Genesis chapter 11, verse 1 through 9. Genesis chapter 11, verse 1 through 9 says, "Now the whole earth had one language and the same words. And as people migrated from east, they found a plain in the land of Shinar and settled there. And they said to one another, 'Come, let us make bricks and burn them thoroughly.' And they had bricks for stone and bitumen for mortar. Then they said, 'Come, let us build ourselves a city and a tower with its top in the heavens. And let us make a name for ourselves, lest we be dispersed over the face of the whole earth.' And the Lord came down to see the city and the tower which the children of man had built. And the Lord said, 'Behold, they are one people, and they have one language, and this is only the beginning of what they will do. And nothing that they propose to do will now be impossible for them. Come, let us go down, and there confuse their language, so that they may not understand one another's speech.' So the Lord dispersed them from there over the face of all the earth, and they left off building the city. Therefore its name was called Babel, because there the Lord confused the language of all the earth, and from there the Lord dispersed them over the face of all the earth." It was at this time that everything changed. Man rebelled and did not want to repopulate the earth as God had instructed. Instead, they decided to build a city with a tower that reached into heaven. Now, people were smart in those days. They weren't the prehistoric Neanderthals that scientists tried to brainwash us into believing. In fact, I believe they were much more advanced in those days than we are today. Therefore, I don't believe that they were trying to build a tower that actually reached into heaven, but rather they were building a portal that would transport them into heaven. This idea isn't too far-fetched, as Philip in the book of Acts was transported after baptizing an Ethiopian eunuch who was a court official of Candace, queen of the Ethiopians. He was a high official who was in charge of all her treasure. Acts chapter 8, yes, says that Philip was transported immediately after coming up out of the water, and the eunuch saw him no more. But that is another discussion for another day. But either way, God was not pleased with what the people were doing, so he decided to split them up. He changed their language and their color according to race, forming new ethnicities and forcing the people in great confusion to seek out self-like people and group together, going off in different directions to make a home away from the others. Thus, they repopulated the earth. Another fact that was mentioned in part 1 is the age of the earth. The earth is approximately 6,000 years old and not millions of years old, which gives no chance or credence to the theory of evolution. In order for evolution to even be considered, much less to work, science had to have extreme lengths of time passing and prove God a lie in order to prove God a lie. Which again is not the case. It's not millions of years. For instance, Scripture mentions the Hittite civilization over 50 times in Scripture, but no archaeological evidence was ever found to prove they ever existed. So, skeptics herald abuse on the Bible, saying that it is unreliable as a historic source and therefore cannot be trusted. Besides all of that, they stated that Scripture made up the story because the Hittites could not have had iron chariots since iron was not discovered as yet. But lo and behold, in the 19th and 20th century, what was discovered? You got it. The Hittite civilization. And what were they famous for? None other than iron chariots. Bam! But obviously, you won't hear that on the 6 o'clock news or read all about it in Times Magazine or National Geographics. God and his church are under attack, and those who are attacking are holding or calling the shots. In summary, though, there is to date no real evidence that man evolved from apes. While, on the other hand, the discovery of DNA does more to prove intelligent design than evolution. But scientists who believe in creation are targeted and discriminated against. There are stories of discrimination even being fired for publicizing discoveries that put evolution into serious questioning. So, fearing for their livelihoods, creation scientists hush up their own discoveries and distance themselves from their own creation beliefs. I say again, God and his church are under attack, and the attackers have the funds and the upper hand. I'm Kenny Yates, and this has been part 4 of our creation series. Be blessed and stay blessed in the Lord, and don't be duped.